Come join me in my creative space where we can paint, learn, and have a few laughs. So get comfy and let's get started. Hi everybody, Kat here. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to be painting some watercolor sage today. It goes with the Watercolor Herb Series that we're starting. So to start with, I've mixed some, it's a very simple palette. Hooker's Green, and I mixed it with Quin Rose. If you like, you can add a little bit of Quin Magenta. That's slightly bit pinkier. What I want to do with these purple sage is just incorporate a little bit of that into my painting. So there's lots to do and we'll get started. I decided to switch my camera around just on a slight angle to see if it helped a little bit with the glare from the light. So I have my clean water, 2 jars of clean water, and some various brushes, and we can get started. So I'm going to use my size 10 Silver Black Velvet. Just going to wet. I'm using Arches cotton paper. And this is the lighter of the 2 mixes. There's still Hooker's Green with the Quin Magenta. When you mix those 2 colors, you can get a gray, an actual gray out of it. So that's why I used those 2 colors together with a smaller brush. Now this is something that you don't have to do for precision purposes. The purpose is to limit the amount of water in your brush. So, oops. So I am taking the smaller brush to put a little bit of dark in here. You want to start kind of slow. It tends to be dark in the center because they fold inward. And you may or may not put some veins in it. I don't know, I haven't decided if I'm going to yet, so I'm not scratching them in. If I do, I'm going to paint them in. So on to the next one. Wet. If you don't want to wet, just make sure your first layer of green is very wet when you first put it on. That way you don't have to pre-wet your paper. Now I'm going into, it looks darker, but this is the Hooker's Green with a little bit more magenta in it. If your green that you choose doesn't turn out quite what you want, add a cool blue to it. Why I want cool is because cool makes things go back. They get recessed, and therefore it looks like the leaf, the light is catching this part of the leaf and not the center. So that's why I like cool colors for shadows. Just going to add a little bit here. It faded a lot. Now purple sage, I don't know if the taste is all that different. That's the one I used to grow because I just liked the color of it. And it has beautiful purple in the leaves, but I won't do that on this this layer, simply because if I do, then we're going to end up with that grayish browny color, and I don't want that on my first layer. And on the backs of the leaves, depending on what kind of sage it is, sometimes the backs of the leaves are more purple than the front. So what I'm going to choose to do is the front of my sage is going to be more green, and the back is going to be purpley. I'm going to do this one. As long as the leaves aren't touching, you can do them. You can paint them. So I'm going to wet this first. As you can see, I'm not wetting puddles. I just want to dampen the area. And it's okay if you still have green on from before, because we're going to be putting green down anyway. Dry that off a bit. Make sure there's no puddles. That's the important part. You can already see the change in the general color of these leaves from the first one that I've done. This looks much brighter and more of a bit of an artificial look to it. And the darker green looks a bit more natural, so it's kind of bleeding into it now and making a lovely grayish. Sage, if you buy a paint called sage green, like for your walls, it often is like a grayish green. So that's what I'm aiming for here. There's a leaf right in front of this one, and so I would like to make it darker just around that leaf, but I can't paint that actual leaf until this is dry. My cat, one of my cats many moons ago when I was in my 20s, I did not know that cats would eat something that was not good for them. I just assumed they're so smart that they would know better. Anyway, he ate, he chewed on it like grass, and I thought it was okay. And he started foaming at the mouth, and I had to run to the vet. He was okay. He lived till he was almost 20 years old. But I don't know how. He's truly had 9 lives, this cat. I'm just taking off. I really went off of this leaf, and I don't want that. I don't want to have to paint around it to make it that much larger. So that's fixed. That's good enough for me. I'm going to come down on this side. Wetting that first. As you can see, my brush is not clean, and that's okay. So I don't want to repeat for people who are watching all of the herb videos, but I do have to say it in case there's somebody who only watches one, that we'll be doing a series of herbs. And if you would like a specific one covered, I'll do a minimum of 4. If there's something that you really like to see, then just let me know and we'll do that. We'll paint them. And in the drawing that I include, I will have the words spelled here at the bottom. It's just not on my painting right now because I would like mine to, I am going to letter mine when I know what frames they're going in. And I don't know, I may add some decoration to the back of these. So we'll see. I haven't decided yet. The other thing I wanted to show you, sage leaves are prickly. So if you want, I'm not saying you have to do this, but take a piece of saran, a kind of a small plastic wrap, and make it, don't go wider than your leaf because you don't want this on the background. And roll it up and make it all crinkly. And then you can dab in or dab off some of this paint. Dry it off on your towel. Go back, dry it off, go back. I think these are too dry now for me to do that, but it just gives it a little bit of texture, and these are very textured leaves. They kind of feel like and look like a cat's tongue, actually. Maybe that's why he ate it. Thought it was a different cat. He was crazy, this cat. I got him at a very, very young age. I think he was taken from his mother too young. And so I think he thought I was his mother, and I was only about 22 or something when I got him. So I wasn't prepared to be a cat mother. All right, I'm going to add a tiny bit, just a tiny bit more dark in there. So it's still wet, so it softens out. That's too wet. I'm going to do this one, which has a slight fold. So I'm only going to do the inside of where the green is. And I'm using my smaller brush so that I don't paint anything in front of it. If you find that this drawing is a little bit too complicated for you to paint, just omit a couple of the leaves when you trace the drawing out. Like you can erase this one in front or make it smaller so that there's no overlap. I kind of liked the idea of the overlap. Oh, I can't touch this one. This one is a little too close for comfort, so I won't do that yet. I will do the ones that are freestanding. The reason why I chose purple sage for this herb series is because most of the herbs, of course, are one shade of green or another, and I thought that it would add a tiny bit of subtle color into the painting. In the future, I will be doing herbs that are more loose, a little more watercolory, painterly, less precise, but it is always a nice idea to do a painting that is a little more detailed so that you learn a little more about your subject and how you can give it shape and with the lights and the darks. And then when you choose to do a loose painting, you will learn and you'll be able to decide what details you can omit and which ones that you think you should include. But the whole thing is a learning process. Now, secret, I am using the back of a painting. So I've always wanted to try this with the Arches paper, and I didn't know if it would work. So we shall soon see how it turns out. I'm using my smaller brush for this part now because the leaves are a little smaller. I wonder how the glare is going for you. Hope it's better. I like to zoom in so you don't have to see my whole work area. You just have to see the painting and the paints. I think that's the most important part. Now I'm going in with some dark. Bit of water on my brush. Dabbing it off. Just gonna forcing it out a little bit there. I'll do this one. I added a flipped one and a couple of backwards ones just for interest. If you don't want to do that, please don't. Please don't stress yourself about it. Just do what you're comfortable with. So as I said earlier, I'm going to make the backs of these purple. So the front is the light green. Or the lighter green, I shouldn't say it's light. And just with a tad bit of dark. I'm just going to add a bit there. I won't touch the back because I don't want that to bleed. So this is dry enough to do. As you can see, I left the little leaves to the end because they overlap other leaves. And, you know, depending on your drawing, you may want to make a few changes and adjust the direction, or you may decide to completely erase that leaf. So this one is also facing us. I speed things along here and there throughout the video where I don't think you're going to miss anything if I do. This one, I would like that to be the back so that you're seeing the purple part. So this will be the first purpley one. And the veins on the purple ones are, the veins on the back kind of stick out and they're light. And these go inward and they're darker. So that's the other way you're going to be able to tell that this is the back. I'm going to take a little bit of this light. I'm just going to drop it in here and there. just to incorporate the color a little bit. And when that's dry, I'm going to remove paint. Before I do this large one, I'm going to put that pinky purpley color in the back. I'm going to do a very light wash of it to start. Because I can always go darker, but I cannot go lighter. The reason why I use these Quinn colors is there's a pink, the opera pink it's called, opera rose I think it's called, and then there's the bright rose. They are fugitive, so they don't last long in any kind of lighting. So if you're going to be hanging these, it's always better to use paints that are light fast, especially if it's going into a bright room. Okay, so I'm going to do this one because it's not touching anything. This one will be the last. Watercolor often goes through a very ugly stage, but not so much for botanicals. I find that more true for an animal, which humans are animals, but you know, if it's a person or an animal, then I do find it true for sure. But you lose hope. Even as many times as I've painted before, I still say, oh, I don't know if this is going to make it. When I smell sage, it reminds me of turkey dinner. And it doesn't matter what time of year I eat sage, if I cook with it or if I go somewhere and they've cooked with it, it reminds me of Christmas dinner. I'll do the stems along with the second coat of paint. And then I'm going to do the mauve background here using my smaller brush. A bit of the dark green to make a shadow here. I can always go over it again later. And up here, just to add some green. I think I can do this one now safely. This one will also be backwards. So on this one, I'm going to do the green tip first because it's right next to the purple on the bottom of that leaf. So I'd like a bit of a contrast there. Okay, so now I'm going to drop in some rose color. And the reason I did that for this leaf is because the leaf is larger and therefore older. So I wanted the purpley color to look a little darker and grayed out than that little baby leaf just above it. I'm going to leave this dry and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Everything is nice and dry. This is turning out quite nice. I like this one. I don't think I'm going to fuss with it too much. Now with a bit of a smaller brush, this is a size 4. I'm going to start with this over here. Whoop. Once again, I'm wetting it. So do make sure that your paper's nice and dry, with a little bit of dark, just going right there in the center. And then with some of this Quinn magenta, just want to drop some in on the edges. Not all everywhere, just in certain spots. And then you can bring some into the leaf, just a little bit, just so it's not so even, because mostly the front is green. That's what I've decided. If you're the painter, you decide. So I will do the same thing to this one. Bit of dry, bit of dark, so that it is very concentrated in there. Just drying off the ferrule of my brush. Sometimes I'm a bit lazy about that and I forget to do it, and then I always regret it. Oops. So if this paint is pretty thick, it won't move as much, but it will still have a nice soft edge to it. I forgot to put those in. Just a little bit of veining. I don't really want to overdo it. And that's it for that one. If you're afraid you put too much, you clean your brush, dry it off, and just touch it a teeny bit. But I don't mind that. I'm liking what I see. I'm going to show you how I'm doing the veining. I'm taking a brush. If you don't have a brush like this, you really need to go. You can get something dirt cheap. It has to be nylon, soft. You see it's soft, but it's firm. It has a good spring back. Because it's short, it has a good spring back. If this were a longer brush, it might have a good spring. Like this is another good one if you need a larger area. I couldn't use this on here because it's too big. So you're gonna wet this brush, dry it off, and I'm going behind where the vein would be here, and then dab it off. And you're going to see that this is going to start becoming light. So it just tapers off ever so gently, and there we have it. That's the back. And the reason I did that is because I do want to add more green and purple to it, but it needs to be around this white vein. So I'm going to put some purple here, like that. And then a little bit of that lighter hooker's green. Loving these, really liking this sage. I'm glad I chose the purple sage. Coming down here, I'm just going to add a little bit in. Because we have a purple one here and a purple one here, so I don't have to overdo it. This is just to add a little bit of variety to your greens, because if you, as I said, if you do a set of these, everything's kind of a different shade of green. For those of you who did not watch this yet, this is the first video. This is the basil. So tune in if you're interested. Before I do the large one, I'm going to do this very small one. And a bit of light. This one I'm adding the light in here first because it's tiny and I don't want to overpower it. It is just a baby one. A little leaf, so I don't want to lose that look. So I'm going to take a little bit of the dark, just a tiny bit, and put it in there. Some sage is more round than others. The kind I've grown is this shape. That's the kind my cat chewed. So it must have been tasty. Okay, I'm just speeding things along here, adding some darks to this already beautiful leaf and just giving it a little bit of life. So this is the back. I'm going to do that. I'm going to erase the vein. So I'm trying to see how it's coming. It's growing out of the plant, right? So like that. Whoops. That was a little bit, that was a blob of water. There, perfect. Before I finish the others, I think I'm going to add in the stems. They are actually, they're purpley too. So I want to put a base, layer in. I'm going to use some brown. This is the only other color I think you might want to add. You don't have to do brown if you don't want. You can do them green. I just want something slightly different from everything else in here. Quite watered down. And you don't have to wait till the end to do your leaves, your stems, but I prefer to do that. So you just do what you are most comfortable doing. The stems aren't that thin on a sage plant. If you've never grown sage in your garden before, the stems can resemble bean sprouts actually. You know, the only thing I don't like about gardening, I don't know if anybody, I don't do it anymore. I do it out of pots now sometimes, but it's the bugs. I'm not a bug lover. I know we need them, but they scare me. And they gross me out a little bit, so. But I do like the rest of gardening. I love growing my own fresh stuff, and I don't mind getting my hands in the dirt. As long as there aren't any bugs, I'm good. Okay, going in with this magenta. And I'm just spreading it down the stems. Whoops, I forgot a stem there. I didn't do this one just yet, so I'm going to do that. Actually, all I'm going to do to this one, I think, is just add a little bit of a sharp line on either side of the back of the vein and then soften it. I don't think I need to do anything else to it. And I will work on this one, still using my small brush, whatever small brush you are comfortable with. Just adding some dark down here so you can see that the leaf is casting some shadow there. I'm going to do this one now. Just going around here so that this leaf does stand out. And if I want to add a little bit of purple, I'll just wet a couple of spots here. I want some up at the top, I think, and down here. This painting, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's very relaxing. And if you ever have to give a gift to somebody and you're really at a loss, these things, these handmade gifts are always a big hit. This one I have to fix. This one's dry enough. This one I'm going to outline too a little bit, since it's just behind the other one. But if you find anything's too dark, you can always just dampen it after it's dry and use your towel to sop some of it up. Don't panic. These are transparent colors and they lift quite well. So with a bit of the sharper green, putting some veins here and there. I'm just adding a bit of a darker line on this side so that it implies there's a bit more shadow, and then you can see the difference between this leaf and this one. I'm just going to do a little bit of fine detailing and then we'll call it a day. I am loving this painting. Sometimes you can paint stuff that you're not that thrilled with, and other times you paint things and you just quite love it, and this is one of them. I just love it. That is it for our purple sage. I hope you give it a try and enjoy painting it as much as I did. If you do, leave me a note in the comments section. I love to hear from you. If you liked the video, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. Happy watercoloring. Bye bye.